conspiracy theories that just won't seem to quit is this idea that's out there that the government is spraying chemicals out of the backside of airplanes to control the population or change the climate or test weapons or infuse us all with Viagra or create a race of half human, half monkey hybrids. I don't know, there's a lot of different theories. It's easy to generate all these different theories when you have no evidence to base any of this on. And that idea is out there, and it's called chemtrails, these contrails in the air of white evaporated materials and that sort of thing. People believe there are sinister backgrounds to it.
Well, have you heard the theory that we're all being bombarded with a cocktail of chemicals from on high? The allegation is that those white vapour trails in the sky left by aircraft are evidence of a government weather modification cover-up, and in the process we're all being slowly poisoned. So is this a baseless conspiracy theory or something sinister that we should be taking seriously? Joining us live from California is one of the most well-known advocates of what is loosely called the chemtrails theory, Dane Wigington, and to challenge him from Australian Skeptics, Ken McLeod, a retired air traffic controller. Morning to you both. Dane, I'll start with you. What proof do you have that chemtrails are happening and that they are for climate engineering?
First, I would start with the fact that we at geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest website in the world on the subject, don't recognize the chemtrails term. Semantics is important because if people search that term, they find conspiracy theory and hoax by design. So we advise sticking to the climate science terms: climate engineering, geoengineering, solar radiation management. In regard to the proof we have, in addition to having government documents, Senate documents, presidential documents, we have U.S. Air Force former generals, 2 former generals communicating with us. We have NASA satellite imagery like that, which you're showing right now, that clearly no one needs to know anything about meteorology to see that there's very unnatural patterns in those cloud formations, in fact, patterns that nature cannot make. In addition to our testing of precipitation from around the globe, which has yielded without exception the climate engineering components in the precipitation: aluminum, barium, strontium, polymer fibers. We have just at great expense and great effort completed atmospheric testing using a flying laboratory that NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also uses, and we have just confirmed the same climate engineering elements that were emitted from aircraft in a layer that we flew through. We have just confirmed this, first type of its test ever. This is a court admissible type of evidence. I could go on, but the bottom line, in addition to all this, we have film footage of these aircraft at altitude turning on and off. You can't turn condensation on and off with the nozzles visible. As you see in that particular image you're showing now, you can see the nozzles on the wings. We have up-close photographs as well. If people don't believe what they see with their own eyes, I think there's not much we can show them.
Well, Dan, just sort of pulling back from that really sort of specific detail, why a good test of any sort of theory goes back to Cicero. Who benefits? Why would the government be using aeroplanes to poison its own population or change the climate? It seems like a very convoluted and inefficient way, for one thing, of doing anything. And why would they want to do it anyway and then cover it up?
First, in regard to your stated objective of poisoning the population, you said that, I didn't.
Okay.
That's not what we have stated at geoengineeringwatch.org. In regard to engineering the climate, I'll answer in their words. Militaries around the globe, starting with the U.S. military, state emphatically and on the record that the greatest national security threat of all is the climate collapse. What we face is far worse than global warming. We face what's more scientifically termed an abrupt climate collapse. The stated scientific purpose, and by the way, we have every science institution, every climate science institution around the globe discussing exactly what we see in our skies as something that needs to be done immediately to spray light scattering particles into the sky to block some of the sun's incoming thermal energy. So this is the stated purpose of solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection, cloud albedo enhancement, to spray light blocking particles into the sky. And in fact, that's what got me into this issue. I have a background in solar energy. I formerly worked for Bechtel Power, the world's largest engineering firm. I have a fully off-grid home that was on the cover of the world's largest renewable energy magazine, and I was losing extraordinary amounts of my solar power uptake from whatever these aircraft were emitting. And clearly, condensation cannot block that much of the sun. So we knew there was a problem. We began testing, and we were astounded at the amount of data that was available that official sources were not discussing. And by the way, they're not discussing it because in one case, we have a federal gag order, an illegal federal gag order in the U.S., gagging all the nation's weathermen. I think we should ask ourselves why that's going on.
A lot of people believe that these are real. In fact, 17% of respondents back in 2011 in an international survey said they believed the existence of a secret large-scale atmospheric spraying program to be true or partly true. 17%, that is literally millions and millions of Americans believing that it exists without any evidence whatsoever. However, it turns out that people reading conspiracy theory websites aren't the only ones with information to bear on this subject. There are actually scientists who study this sort of thing, who study the atmosphere, and now there's a study to leverage their expertise. The study, published by Environmental Research Letters, found that the two groups of experts surveyed, atmospheric chemists who specialize in condensation trails and geochemists working on atmospheric deposition of dust and pollution, overwhelmingly rejected the notion that such a program exists. Out of 77 participating scientists, 76 said they found zero evidence of a secret spraying program, adding that any evidence supposedly cited by those who subscribe to the chemtrail theory could be explained away by poor data sampling and/or normal contrails. There was one guy who said that he found too much barium in one area at one point.
What's up, everybody? Brother Christopher with the heads, not the tails. And for those of you who don't know what barium is a metal. Like I just had a CAT scan did the other day, and they made me drink this stuff, and it contains barium. And they make you drink this metal here so that when you take the CAT scan test, their machine will see the metal that's flowing through your blood, and they can see how your blood's flowing and things like that. But it's really horrible for people for it to just be everywhere. And we're dealing with a really corrupt government.
All right. Well, Ken McLeod from Australian Skeptics, I'll bring you in here. You're a retired air traffic controller. What do you make of these theories?
Well, like in any conspiracy theory, a good one, there is just a germ of truth. Oh. And climate change, global warming, is a real threat to our civilization. Scientists have been discussing climate modification using aerosols and so on in the upper atmosphere. But unfortunately, conspiracy theories have latched onto this and gone further. There is no evidence that anyone is actually spraying chemicals in the atmosphere to alter the world's climate. Now, climate change, global warming, is a real threat to our civilization. Scientists have been discussing climate modification using aerosols and so on in the upper atmosphere.
And so he couldn't totally rule it out. The other 76 were fairly sure about this. And here is all too often what we find, that you have a group of people who have studied for years or decades in an area, understand how information is gathered, they understand the field, and then there are other people looking in from the inside and suspecting that things are there which actually are not. And as in so many other cases, that is the case here. These people study this stuff. They are contrails. That's all they are. They're water vapor. They're not Viagra. They're not a weapon. They're not changing the climate. And the person one of the people involved in the study, talked a little bit about why they felt this was necessary at this point, saying, "I felt it was important to definitively show what real experts in contrails and aerosols think. We might not convince diehard believers that their beloved secret spraying program is just a paranoid fantasy, but hopefully their friends will accept the facts." And if I seem a little bit harsh, or if Ken there seems a little bit harsh, it's because believing in theories like this not only leads to a generalized sense of distrust in the government, but you should have that distrust aimed in the right direction. And if you're too focused on contrails to notice the very real sorts of corruption going on in government, then your passion and your vigor and your ability to change things is going to be spent in the wrong areas. And I agree with him. Even with this evidence, even with all the climate scientists and the aerosol studies and the deposition people and all of that, there are some who will not be convinced, either by this evidence or the fact that for the chemtrail theory to exist, for the conspiracy to have existed, it would involve literally thousands or tens of thousands of people operating in every state in the country over the course of decades, under both Republican and Democratic administrations, from the people at the very top making the decision to spray us with all these chemicals, to the mechanics and grunts on the ground who'd be loading up the planes on a daily basis, all of whom these days have smartphones and could easily document evidence of it, and yet all of these people over the course of decades have mysteriously and inhumanly been able to keep the secret. It doesn't actually exist, but hopefully some people will be swayed by this new evidence, and that's my final judgment.
Those video clips we saw were a phenomenon called aerodynamic condensation. Now, at low levels and high humidity, where there is a drop of atmospheric pressure, like over the wings or from wingtip vortices, there is a drop in temperature, and that will cause condensation. And it's very commonly seen around airports on rainy days. The chemtrails that people are talking about are the condensation trails from engine exhaust. Now, this is where we have to go back to basic high school science. If you burn a hydrocarbon, the products are carbon dioxide and water. And there's the little chemical formula there, and you'll notice that for every molecule of jet fuel, which is actually kerosene, you will get a molecule of water. So 1 tonne of jet fuel will produce roughly 1 tonne of water. Now, I've done some checking, and over the United States in any one day, about 230,000 tonnes of water are produced in engine exhaust trails. Now, that's where you get this huge mosaic of what appear to be contrails. They're actually technically defined by the World Meteorological Organization as cirrus clouds. And the persistence can vary from a few seconds to 20, 30 minutes. And that depends on the temperature and the humidity of that environment. Now, in the United States, where you have a mosaic of aircraft routes, you will get that crisscross pattern. In Australia, not so much, because mainly our busy air routes are north to south. And not only that, you won't see many of them over the major cities, because by that time the aircraft are on climb or descent, and so they're below the freezing level for condensation trails.
Ken, I'll just interrupt you, because that all sounds very plausible, doesn't it, Dane? Doesn't that make more sense than the government secretly trying to control climate change, which surely, if they'd found a way to do that, they'd be shouting from the rooftops, and indeed the stratosphere?
Would they be shouting from the rooftops when we have federal gag orders and confidentiality agreements that are spoken about by the U.S. Air Force generals that we have interviewed on film and on the record? They are not at liberty to speak out about this. The liability issues are incomprehensible. The moment governments around the globe, it's not just the U.S. governments around the globe, we have Senate documents 800 pages long to prove this. The moment they've intervened in climate systems, at that point the liability issue becomes immeasurable, incalculable, because every climate cataclysm becomes suspect.
But I guess
let's cut to the chase on. If I can answer a question about the condensation trail aspect first, this is very important in response to Ken. Ken, are you familiar with a high bypass turbofan jet engine? Are you familiar that that is the standard fitted engine on all commercial carriers and all military tankers? That engine is a jet-powered fan. 80 to 90% of the air that passes through that engine is non-combusted. By design, that engine is nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail. In regard to the on-off sequences we see, the atmosphere is layered horizontally, not vertically. So this excuse that this is just some vertically layered humid conditions is ridiculous. We see researchers in the Arctic with their breath condensing. Do we see them standing around for a half hour with a big cloud hanging over their head? That's not how condensation works. Again, everything we see in the sky is exactly what is described by climate scientists. We're not asking anybody to believe us. We're asking them to look at the photographs of nozzles, film footage, government documents, statements from former military, and when we consider the degree of danger of climate collapse, would we really expect governments around the globe to ask our permission before deploying these programs, which happened in 1945, by the way? The B-17 bombers were part of this program. We have film footage of them turning on and off, too.
Well, Ken, can I ask, what are these planes if they aren't geoengineering planes?
Folks, Brother Chris again. Before I get into the chemtrails, what you're seeing on your screen here is one of these demonic alien orb entity things that I've been watching since I was a kid that fly across the sky Now, I live in Las Vegas, and I tell you, over 90% of the time, these things are flying to the north, as if they're going to Area 51 or something. But anyway, I've been watching them since I was a kid, and I would watch them until they fade out of my sight. But since like 2008, 2011, something like that, I've been noticing that they're hiding behind a smoke screen, like a purple haze they hide behind. And it's just strange to me that all these purple occurrences are happening all over the place. And when I think of the color purple, I actually think of Jimi Hendrix's song, Purple Haze. Now, if you listen to his song, word for word, he's actually telling us something a little bit deeper than acid or, hallucinogens and things is what most people say the song is about. But I think Jimmy was putting something else out there. So I want you to listen to Purple Haze and tell me what you think.
When Hurricane Michael finally moved on, people living in the Florida Panhandle left their homes, walked outside, and saw this eerie yet very beautiful purple sky. People were catching this on social media, Snapchat, all over Instagram. Brooks Garner here now to tell us, how does this happen?
This looks otherworldly. This looks like something you'd see in Star Trek.
Yeah.
But the answer as to why the sky was purple after this major Hurricane Michael is quite grounded. And it's as easy as asking you this. What color is the sky normally on a sunny day?
Blue.
Right. Well, it's blue because of light scattering. You see, sunshine is white. And when sunshine, pure white light, hits nitrogen molecules, it casts a blue light in the sky. That's why the sky looks blue. It's thanks to the nitrogen particles scattering. Now, in the evening, high clouds were still catching that pure white light above the red of the sunset. And what happened, Reka, is that on the ground, when the red beams of the sunset mixed with the blue, purple was a result. This is a process called additive color, and it's a way that a lot of artists will combine light when using projections for various performances.
So this purple light, while beautiful, again, as we said, very eerie, it's not an indication of any other weather threat or anything like that, right?
There's an old saying that a red sky at night is a sailor's delight, and that generally means the storm is moving out. In this case, it was purple, which is extra lucky. Unfortunately, now the cleanup begins, but it is a good sign that the storm is over.
Yeah, so this is a weather phenomenon that could happen even under the best circumstances, even in our area.
Right, if we had a day of big thunderstorms and it happened right at the sunset, we too could see purple skies.
You know what? They will have an excuse for just about anything, especially if it goes against their agenda. But what I'm seeing here is that there's so much metal that they're pumping into the sky that our sky becomes electrically charged.
Why was it so purple, so magical last night?
All right, Mike, so let's talk about it because the sunset was just brilliant, all right? I know we had an early wake-up call, but I even stepped outside my door to take a picture as well. So we had purple sky post-Dorian as it was exiting the First Coast offshore. This photo comes from Alex Boyd. Now, why was it purple? The sky's usually blue, right? Well, it has a lot to do with our color spectrum. Roy G. Biv, all right? Now, typically, we see blue skies, but actually purple's in there, believe it or not. But because of the wavelengths of these colors, red, orange, yellow, green, they're much longer, and so they actually get filtered out blue and green, or blue and purple, are usually always there. But because there was so much moisture in our atmosphere, as the sun was setting, we had dew points in the 70s, and then we also had those very low, thick clouds. We actually had that moisture wrapping around all of the particles in our atmosphere, so we saw the purple versus the blue, making for that beautiful sunset last night. Keitha and Katie, did you take a look at it? Did you get to see it?
No, I'm just seeing it this morning, and it is gorgeous.
I was about to go to sleep, same thing. I saw people posting on social media, so I got up and like peeked out the window.
Oh, you got a chance to see it
It
firsthand.
was beautiful.
Wow.
kiss the sky. Put a spell on me. Just the end of time. Help me. Kiss the sky. All around. Don't know if I'm going up or down.
I don't know if you guys could see that, but these clouds are like really, really blue. Like blue clouds covering the whole strip. Blue clouds. Look how blue them clouds is. There was a rainbow going through them a minute ago. Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Big old blue clouds.
Well, the condensation trails we see are just normal public transport aircraft. I've done some checking. At any time over the US, there's about 1,000 jet aircraft airborne. And I can give you some figures on how much water they pump out. An Airbus A330 creates about 7 tonnes of water an hour, a Boeing 787 5.5 tonnes an hour, an Airbus A380 over 13 tonnes an hour. Now, Dane asked right at the start of his little talk, am I familiar with the high bypass turbojet engine? Of course I am. It's the standard engine that's been around since the 60s. But to say that they create less condensation trail is just not true. In actual fact, they create more of a condensation from the burnt fuel for several reasons. One is that the turbulence assists the condensation, and the other reason is these engines are generally bigger, so they burn more fuel and create more water. Now, strangely enough, I've got here an excerpt from the United States Air Service newsletter from 1921, where they wrote an article about the first observed condensation trail, an aircraft operating at 26,000 feet. And this was a complete mystery to everyone at the time because it had not been noted before. And the article goes into, well, what could be causing this? Is it carbon particles from the fuel, that sort of thing. Condensation trails are not new, and you saw that clip earlier of the B-17s operating over Germany with the Mustangs above them. At the time, pilots used to be given as part of their pre-flight briefing the expected condensation level, and it's generally around 26,000 feet. So the trick for the bombers was to operate just below the condensation level so that they could see the Messerschmitts coming in. This is nothing new. Condensation trails have been around for a long time. They're very well understood.
Can I respond? Yeah.
It's,
Well, I think
we're out of
time,
running out of
Dane,
time,
sorry.
but Dane, I am going to let people know to find out more about Dane's case, head to geoengineeringwatch.org. Dane and Ken, thank you so much for joining us and putting your cases.
Oh my God. Lisa, are you getting this on camera? This tornado just came and erased the Hollywood sign. The Hollywood sign is gone. It's just shredded.
Martin, what can you see? Is anyone hurt?
I wouldn't be surprised. There is so much damage down there. And there are people down there taking pictures.
Hey, what the hell are you guys doing? Go for cover! You can't stay here! Get out of here!
What you're seeing are 2 actual tornadoes striking Los Angeles International Airport. Wait, it looks like they joined and formed one large tornado.
Tommy!
Oh my God!
Urge all of our viewers to stay away from the area.
Jeff, where are you?
I'm on Jetland fine. I'm on my way in now.
You're on TV. You're right in the middle of it.
Oh my God!
You gotta get out of here, man. That bus just got dropped on top of that Porsche. Oh my God, I hope no one was in that car.
For our national audience just joining us now, we are going live to downtown Los Angeles right now. Tommy?
If you look over there behind me, that's a tornado. Yes, a twister in Los Angeles. It's one of many tornadoes that are destroying our city. There's another one. That's the Los Angeles